Prosecutors at the Justice Department don't know the difference between friendship and corruption.
The jury has just reached a verdict in the so-called Bridgegate trial. Former Chris Christie allies Bill Baroni and Bridget Ann Kelly have been found guilty on all counts.
Get the hell off the beach in Asbury Park and get out.
CNN projects that Phil Murphy, the Democratic candidate for governor of New Jersey, will be elected the new New Jersey governor.
The state of New Jersey is standing up.
Hello and welcome to this incredibly dramatic introduction for the News Commons Radio Hour. I am Joe Amditas. I'm Associate Director of the Center for Cooperative Media here at Montclair State. You are listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair, and today we're going to bring you a new show. It's going to be a weekly show every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. where we're going to talk about the news in New Jersey and beyond. We're going to interview journalists, both local, hyperlocal, statewide, and others. We're going to talk to a couple of industry thought leaders and academics and really just try to figure out what is going on in the crazy world that we live in when it comes to the news industry. So first off, we have our own little news brief here for you today, what's going on in New Jersey news. And I will go ahead and start you off here. We have a story from NJ.com. As most of you might know, only Delaware has the worst commute than New Jersey, according to a new study from insurance company Esurance. NJ.com looks at why our daily slogs are so bad and why they're actually getting longer and longer and worse over the time. Meanwhile, neighborhood-based gangs involving children as young as 8 years old are menacing some communities in New Jersey, according to law enforcement officials who told members of the State Commission of Investigation. Oftentimes, they're sharing the crimes that they're committing on platforms like Instagram. NJ Spotlight reports that the gangs are being looked at by the commission, which is working on a plan to help state and local officials deal with these groups better and figure out how to deal with these new violent groups that are cropping up for young children. Next, a few industries in New Jersey are regulated as heavily as the alcohol industry, which is why so many people are up in arms when lawmakers earlier this week introduced new regulations for microbreweries in New Jersey into the already complicated legal landscape of breweries and alcohol dealing. NJ Penn, who will be with us later today, Matt Skoufalos is the editor and publisher of NJ Penn. He will be with us later in the program. He took a closer look at the new regulations and tried to figure out what they could mean for several local breweries in suburban Camden County. Speaking of heavily regulated industries, the rise of cannabis has created an entirely new stream of revenue for politicians, especially in New Jersey recently. WNYC reports that tens of thousands of dollars have flowed from the marijuana industry over the last few years to State Senator Nicholas Scutari and others who are pushing for legalization. This according to data filed with the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission. And finally, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy signed an executive order this week that's meant to help direct state resources to help revitalize beleaguered Trenton. NJ.com says that, among other things, the state will review Trenton's master plan and create a new action plan. And that's a look at the news here in New Jersey today. Again, you are listening to the News Commons Radio Hour. Title is pending. We are still putting this thing together. It's going to be, like I said, a weekly show where we talk about not only just what's going on in New Jersey, but what's going on in the world of news. Today we have a pretty full show for you, actually. We're going to be talking a little bit later to Jamie Bedrin about the Kavanaugh / Dr. Blasey Ford hearings that are actually currently still ongoing, if I believe. I think they were still going as I walked over to the studio. We're going to discuss that. We're going to be breaking down some of the things that were said, some of the questions that were asked of Dr. Ford. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this is unfolding, especially in such a public way. I think this is one of the most watched hearings, at least in recent history. There were a lot of echoes of the Anita Hill hearings when she went before Congress and had to testify about her sexual assault allegations for another Supreme Court nominee who ended up making it to the court. And I think I see Jamie Bedrin entering the studio now. Welcome, Jamie. Hello. We'll let you get settled.
Thank you.
No problem. So we're going to do a brief recap of what we've heard so far in the Kavanaugh Blasey Ford hearing. We're going to talk again. We're going to play some clips from yesterday's insane press conference with President Trump, who gave a variety of answers to a wide range of questions. Not all of which stayed on topic. You might be surprised to hear, but we'll break some of that down for you. And then later we have two guests. We have Mary Galliotto, who is the publisher and editor of Mercer Me, a small hyperlocal news site in Mercer County, who is trying a new approach to her business model. As many of you may or may not know, the news business is currently undergoing a lot of crises at the same time, one of which is the collapse or at least weakening of the traditional ad-based business model. And so Mary has been working on a subscription-based program where she's trying to solicit support from her community who rely on her coverage, and she's going to talk to us a little bit later about how that effort is going, some of the challenges she's faced, because as we know, not every experiment is successful, and the ones that are great, but we also need to learn from the challenges that we have and some of the shortcomings of those experiments. And then after that, we have, again, Matt Skoufalos of NJ Penn, both of which will be joining us by phone. Matt's going to talk a little bit more about those microbrewery regulations that were recently introduced in New Jersey that's causing a bit of an uproar and a stir. And then we're going to finish out. We're going to have Director Stephanie Murray, who's a director of the Center for Cooperative Media here, and she's going to come talk to us about some of the projects that the center is working on and some other things that she thinks we may find relevant. So, and after that, we're going to have a special segment. We're going to rip off PewDiePie a little bit and do a Last Week I Asked You, and we're going to talk about where you get your news and why it's important to you. So after this quick break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Kavanaugh and Dr. Blasey Ford with Jamie Bedrin. We will be right back.
On Friday, October 5th, 2018,
college radio stations across the country will unite for College Radio Day.
College radio gives an outlet for the students involved with it
and creates important programming that is not heard anywhere else.
College radio is a place where important issues are discussed and the voices of the next generation are heard.
College Radio Day is a day to let the world know that when all else fails, college radio speaks.
For more information, please visit collegeradio.org.
You, my friend, have connections in the government. Yes, you. USA.gov, the official source for government information on thousands of topics. And like any good connection, there's no telling where it can take you. Why, one day you're getting student loan information. Next thing you know, you need job hunting tips. Today's road construction info could have you searching for telecommuting ideas tomorrow. The more you use USA.gov, the more uses you'll find for it. Passport applications, for example. They've been known to lead to a sudden interest in travel advisories. Our new mobile apps will even update you on the go. So whether you have information to get or ideas to give your government, check out USA.gov. Who knows? Lottery results today could lead to retirement planning tomorrow. USA.gov. With the right connections, there's no telling where you can go.
Prepare yourselves, puny humans, for this is the end of your world. What you hear now is only the beginning. Coming soon at 90.3 WMSC, there will be war. But this is not any war. This is war of the worlds.
Attention all planets of the Solar Federation.
Are you looking for the best in progressive rock, progressive metal, art rock, post-rock, experimental electronic, and other sounds within the prog universe? Tune into the Prog Power Station Thursday nights from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. I am Dave the Robot. Oh my god. Is this my purpose? Reading an ad for a pretentious music program that plays 3-hour songs? I no longer wish to be.
The Prog Power Station, Thursday nights at 10 on WMSC.
Dave the Robot, ending life cycle.
Okay, thank you, Dave the Robot. We are back here with News Commons Radio Hour. I am Joe Amditis, and I'm joined in studio here with Professor Jamie Bedrin. And we're going to talk a little bit about the current Dr. Christine Blasey Ford hearing that's happening in front of Congress at the Senate Judiciary Committee at the moment. I do believe it's still going on, but I just want to play her opening statement. It's about 35 seconds, so I just want to play this real quick to give you a sense of what's going on in this hearing and the sort of the nature of her testimony and the tone of it. And so then we're going to discuss a little bit, and we're going to go into some of the recent news that's broken around Kavanaugh confirmation in general. And so here's Dr. Blasey Ford's opening statement.
Today, not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school. I have described the events publicly before. I summarized them in my letter to Ranking Member Feinstein and again in a letter to Chairman Grassley. I understand and appreciate the importance of your hearing from me directly about what happened to me and the impact that it has had on my life and on my family.
That was Dr. Christine Blasey Ford giving her opening statement at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. Professor Bedrin, what chat should I? Do you want to just call you Jamie?
Please.
Okay, Jamie, tell me a little bit about. This has been a heartbreaking hearing, to say the least. I think the testimony that Dr. Ford has given so far to any rational observer has been, in my opinion, genuine, has been heartfelt, and has really been devastating to watch her go through this, especially in such a public, an excruciatingly public way. Can you talk a little bit about your reactions, both to her opening statement and sort of the hearing in general as it stands so far?
100%. I took a walk this morning. We've had a break in the rain and realized I was getting very close to the time of the hearing on my way home. And I took my phone and I actually started streaming it on CNN until I got into my house, which is when I ran and put the television on. And, the first thing that struck me was her voice. Because up until this point, we hadn't really heard her voice. And I bring that up, yes, my background is in radio, so I, pay attention to those things. But I remember people saying the same thing about probably Anita Hill and also, in an odd way, Monica Lewinsky. It reminded me of, that time, which was, I guess I was in high school, but her voice has been so calm. She's been calm and so thoughtful in her word choice and in her presentation that it's hard not to sit there and it's just unbelievably devastating and at the same time captivating. I mean, you really can't stop watching or listening. The moment I left my house to get in my car, to drive here, to teach a class, I put it on the radio. My friends have been texting each other. And there's something so raw and real about her. She asked for caffeine at one point, but clearly I don't think she wanted coffee. She wanted a Coke, which is what, then later she was holding onto. I can't imagine what she's going through, but I think Senator Richard Blumenthal probably summed it up best in talking about what a teachable moment for America, because clearly this is a woman who, she had resources and she hid this and kept it inside for many years, really was very thoughtful about this decision to come forward, and frankly, I think decided that she needed to. I think, to quote her, it was her she called it her civic duty.
I think one of the interesting things, aside from the testimony itself, was the structure of the way this hearing. And you mentioned Monica Lewinsky and the way that she was treated. And I think that the New York Times, the Daily this morning, covered a lot of that. I'm sorry, not the Daily. This is Slow Burn, the latest episode of Slow Burn from Slate. Fantastic podcast about the Clinton impeachment hearings and the whole process of there, and the way that not just the senators on the panel responded and treated Monica Lewinsky, but the people who were watching, the audience, the United States, treated her. Do you see differences? Can you talk about, do you see any differences in just I heard a lot of genuine, what seemed like genuinely apologetic statements from the Democratic senators on the panel, contrasted with the prosecutor from Arizona who Republicans had appointed or have chosen to speak on their behalf. Do you hear differences? Do you hear a more respectful tone to this hearing from any side here, or is this still a public excoriation in the same way or in the same vein as you would expect all those years ago. Now it's 20 years ago. Do you see progress in that at all? I mean, I'm not asking you to be a historian or,
it's an excellent question. And I mean, and I'm trying to remember, and I don't really remember with Lewinsky, and I do remember more with Anita Hill. And, there's just no comparison. I mean, you're talking about, Anita Hill is an academic also, but she's, a black woman in America. One of the things with Dr. Ford is they made an effort, they made an effort to highlight all of her degrees, right? I think she has 2 master's degrees and a PhD, in addition to like her undergraduate degree. They seem to be trying to be as calm and maybe the word is accommodating. I don't know how genuine it is, but it's not a. I don't feel like she's on the other end of a firing range.
It's interesting to say that because to me, of course, I was 9, I believe, when the Monica Lewinsky hearings were going. I believe I was 3. It was 1992, was Anita Hill, correct? Something around there. So I was young. Yeah. I don't have any memory of this, but I did notice
That's
that.
Young.
So I did notice something though. I have a degree in criminal justice, and I know what a cross-examination looks like, and I know that what I saw today. Let's just say hinted of it, to say the least. The questions about the maps, the questions about the fear of flying, I knew that was coming. For those of you who weren't listening to the hearing, there was a series of questions by the Arizona prosecutor who was appointed by Republicans to speak for them, where she hinted at the stated fear of flying that Dr. Blasey Ford has mentioned before, and as part of the reason why she did not initially want to come out to Washington to give testimony, especially in such a short period of time. And they went through this process of, or the prosecutor went through this process of sort of walking her through all the times she's flown in the past. And it was clear from the beginning, as soon as they started asking those questions, where they were going with this. And it was a sort of, well, if you really have PTSD from this happening, and you can't fly because of it. And they did the same thing again with the 2 front doors question.
Right. What about the polygraph? Did you pick up on that when they said, did you, so you took a polygraph on the day that you had your grandmother's funeral?
Yeah, that's exactly the same line of questioning where it's not as gotcha as, say, the Strzok hearings, the Peter Strzok hearings, where they're really just visceral enemy.
Right.
It's clear that the Republicans at least are aware how sensitive this is going to be and how it's going to be perceived and the kind of backlash they may get. But it doesn't seem to have stopped that sort of. Basically, it seems like it has been whittled down to the most sanitized version of a cross-examination.
I think
but still, I think qualifies as a more aggressive than I think is warranted. In this case,
I think that's fairly accurate, Joe. And just for clarification, the Anita Hill hearings were just a couple of years before Lewinsky. Those were like 95.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then I guess Hill was 91 or 92. I mean, within the couple of years of each other, but. You're right, and I was just playing the hearings, airing them live really to my students, and I said, do you guys understand what's going on here with this woman, why she's pausing, why the attorney is pausing and asking about the polygraph, that she's trying to discredit her, but agreed, it wasn't like, all the things that could come up and that you could say, like it wasn't like the Jodie Foster movie, The Accused, right? Where they just tear her down,
But it certainly, to me, did not seem like an opportunity for them to actually listen and get her full account and allow her to speak. It seemed more of them trying to build walls and, carry her into a certain area where they would be able to say, well, okay, well, if you had PTSD and you flew to Costa Rica, you like traveling, don't you? And on one part of me wanted to just scream, yeah, man, there's Xanax for that.
Yeah.
And the other part of me wanted to be like, this, people often do things that are uncomfortable for them in a pursuit of a larger or more pleasurable goal, whether it's vacation or doing your civic duty in speaking to Congress. But I want to talk a little bit more about the other allegations that are surrounding this, because one of the things that I think a lot of even people on Twitter have been pointing out that, this hearing is not about Dr. Ford necessarily. This is about Brett Kavanaugh, or Bart O'Kavanaugh, whatever he goes by at this time. But Brett Kavanaugh is the one, if there was a trial in this sense, Brett Kavanaugh is more, this is a job interview for him. And if we're going to be questioning these kind of things, this is what we needed to focus on. And so before we go forward real quick, I just wanted to talk because last night, one additional accuser came forward, an anonymous accuser. Came forward with new allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. This is NBC News reporting. The anonymous complaint was sent to the Republican Party Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado and claims that Kavanaugh physically assaulted a woman in the D.C. area in 1998 while he was drunk. And so, pause for a second. We've heard a lot about the high school issues of a young boy when he was 17. This is one from 1998. Coincidentally, while he was working with Kenneth Starr on the Clinton investigation. And so the little touch of irony there. But the person who sent the complaint described an incident between her own daughter, Kavanaugh, and several friends in 1998. Quote, when they left the bar under the influence of alcohol, the complaint says, they were all shocked when Brett Kavanaugh shoved her friend up against the wall very aggressively and sexually, end quote. Again, it seems to comport with the description of other incidents, both Dr. Blasey Ford and others who've come forward. And the author of the letter said, this is important, there were, quote, at least 4 witnesses, including my daughter, end quote. It seems to me that there is, and I'm not the first person to make this point, but it seems to me like it would be very easy to rectify all of this, or at least explore it further if there were an FBI investigation. And we heard a little bit about that during the hearing today on whether or not that's something that they do. President Trump last night gave no other way to describe it, but a rambling press conference where he seemed to say that, first of all, he called the whole investigation a con job, said that the FBI, it's not something that they do. And I just want to play a clip really quickly from that press conference here.
But here there was nothing to investigate from at least one standpoint. They didn't know the location. They didn't know the time. They didn't know the year. They didn't know anything. And it's like, where do you go? Also, it's not for the FBI. If you look at what Joe Biden said, he said they don't do this. And he said it very clearly. So I think when you really look at it all, it's not going to change any of the Democrats' minds. They're obstructionists. They're actually con artists because they know how quality this man is, and they've destroyed a man's reputation.
Okay, I don't think I can subject the listeners to any more of that. Okay, this is the common line. Of course, it is completely false that this is not the kind of thing that the FBI investigates. I mean, it is literally in the name of the organization. But in addition to that, the background checks, it would simply involve, from my understanding, reopening the background check for Brett Kavanaugh, routine procedure the FBI does hundreds of times a year, as I'm sure. Before we go, because we have to go to a break, and we're going to come back when we have one of our guests on the line. Can you just give me what are your expectations for this? Do you think this will change anything, move the needle at all? I'm sure the public response seems to be overwhelming, but talk a little bit about what do you expect going forward?
I'm not sure, honestly. There are times when I think this is going to have an impact, and her testimony will move the needle, if you will. And I'm not 100% sure that that's what's going to happen. I just don't trust many of these lawmakers that they are going to, deny the confirmation. I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen, and I'd be dishonest if I said I think it is. So
you're not optimistic that this will actually prevent the confirmation of Kavanaugh?
Well, in all fairness, I've only watched her this morning, and I didn't get to finish watching. And I think a lot of it will depend on how he responds, although I think some of the lawmakers don't care and will just do what they were planning to do anyway. But maybe, if a few are swayed or a few are really disturbed by the combination of her testimony and then his, things could shift. It's hard for me to answer. But there was something that you said about, I lost my train of thought, but something that you said earlier that I wanted to go back to really quickly. I think knowing that she's risking so much by putting herself out there and her name out there.
She's already been forced to move,
right?
Because of the threats and the harassment she's received.
This is a big deal. This isn't taken lightly. You know what I mean? Her life is now going to be different than, it was just a few weeks ago.
Because we all know the vast success of every other woman who's come forward prominently and accused and leveled accusations. Anita Hill is clearly rich and living on a mountain, and Monica Lewinsky became no. I mean, this is not there's no clear gain here, political gain for her, and I think she is brave for doing what she's done. I wish her well, and we'll see what happens. This is ongoing. I don't know if the hearing is still going, but I hope not for her sake. But we'll have to see what happens going forward. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little more local, talk about some New Jersey news, and maybe get our spirits up a little bit.
WMSC would like to welcome students new and old to MSU. We are pointing out some of the services and rules on campus to help everyone endure the first weeks of college. Montclair State knows that college isn't exactly the easiest time on someone's mind. To help, the university has CAPS, counseling and psychological services, to help you adapt to your college life and stay healthy. CAPS is committed to ensuring that every student is able to work through any problems that may arise, whether emotional or psychological, and they can refer to other professional help if needed. CAPS is 100% free and will never turn someone away. For more information, go to montclair.edu/counseling and psychological services.
WMSC, Upper Montclair.
All right, welcome back to the News Commons Radio Hour. This is the tentative title for this show. We are joined now by phone by the editor, publisher, reporter, founder, and all-around superstar local journalist Matt Skoufalos of NJ Penn. Matt, can you hear me?
I can, Joe. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us today. We mentioned this a little bit at the top of the hour, but the New Jersey recently introduced new regulations on microbreweries. You wrote a story about this. I'll just give it a little recap here. New Jersey's alcohol industry is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the state. And so when this new legislation or new regulations were introduced, it caused quite a stir. Can you tell us a little bit about what the regulation says and then talk a little bit about the response so far?
Sure. So to really begin to anchor this appropriately, we need to go back to 2012 because that's the last time the state decided it was going to expand privileges for microbreweries in an attempt to grow its burgeoning beer business and try to give them a leg up over, these multinational conglomerates that produce a lot of the beer that's bought, sold, and drank in New Jersey. New Jersey had already done some great stuff with its wine industry, promoting that as an agritourism business. And they were trying to do the same thing to give the craft beer industry, which was super, super small, a little bit of a leg up. So they allowed breweries to establish tasting rooms where you can drink any of the beer that's made at the brewery on site, but that's it. And they had their own special set of circumstances around it. But there were also kind of these competing interests from the Bar and Restaurant Association, those folks who had paid, as you know, whatever the price might be on the open market for a liquor license in New Jersey, and felt that, if you have a microbrewery with a tasting room, that's cutting into my business, X, Y, and Z. And then what recently happened as far as regulations go is that there was a little bit of uncertainty, I think, about what exactly could happen in the tasting room. And in the absence of some specificity, the state felt it needed to step in and talk about what behaviors it was going to allow and not allow. So the new director of the ABC under Governor Murphy is a gentleman named David Reibel, and he put out this special ruling, I'm going to say early this week, that just sort of sent reverberations through the state microbrewing industry. It takes effect immediately. It's now subject to like a 6-month pilot program whereby it's going to be reviewed. People have a chance to comment on the new rules and the impact of it, but it's sort of really more closely codified what you can and can't do as a microbrewery owner or a microbrewery license holder.
And one of these, the thing that I heard, it's sort of catered around events or physical gatherings in these tasting rooms, right? And this is you're not allowed to advertise these events. There's a limit on the number of events that you can hold per year. You're not allowed to the food you can offer or even have in the vicinity. What happened here?
So there's a lot of things. One of the big issues for microbreweries in New Jersey that is not something that microbreweries in neighboring states are beholden to, like Pennsylvania or Delaware or New York, is that if you own a microbrewery in one of those other states, you can also have a restaurant in there or serve some kind of food. You can't do that in New Jersey, and that was a concession to, again, the Restaurant Association. So among the changes, a lot of what they've been geared around is what you can do there as a social event. So people were having TVs in their microbreweries. They were having paint and take pottery events. They were having yoga and beer, trivia nights, live music, all this stuff. And the state was trying to say that if you're creating a bar-like atmosphere, you're potentially infringing on the rights of these other businesses that have paid a premium for their commoditized license. So what they actually handed down was a number of things. The first one is that it limits every microbrewery to 25 public events per year that you have to register with the state 10 days before you have them.
Okay.
It also gives them 52 private parties that they can have per year, but those have to be possibly separated somehow from the rest of whatever's going on in your tasting room.
So this is like a birthday party or something?
List after the fact, yeah. You have to take any food that you bring with you off-site when you're done. You can't drink anything else except what's made there. They even went so far as to say you can no longer have restaurant menus in your brewery, which was another thing that people were doing. And really, it just sort of more strictly limited the atmosphere at a microbrewery tasting room to be about experiencing the beer production, experiencing the room itself, and whatever else happens there. If you want to have a different kind of event that has, I guess, a more social component, it's going to count against your quota of the number of times you could do this. They also did give the microbreweries a couple of concessions that the brewery owners I've talked to said are really important. Number one is that they gave them 12 off-site extension of premises permits, which means if you want to be a brewery owner who has a special event in your town, now you can have that special event, pour your beer there, and you're entitled to the revenue opportunity of that off-site. It's like it makes the place where you're pouring an extension of your tasting room, gives you the rights and privileges of doing that. And they also eliminated the real physical nature of the brewery tour, which has been interpreted widely by different breweries across the state. One of the things of the tasting room was, they had to provide some consumer education part to make it feel like it was beneficial to explain to people what beer making was. Brewery owners are saying, look, we've got that pretty well explained on the first visit, or the second and third visit, it's overkill. So let's just have conversations about the beer and let that be the education of the customers. They eliminated the tour. They gave them the off-site premise permits, and those were the big wins for the microbreweries. But and the third one is that you can provide small snacks, which you weren't allowed to do before, because that would have counted as food service.
Okay, so the reaction to this, obviously, you get your standard knee-jerk reaction across the board in any legislative change or regulatory change. What has the reaction been from the people who have most at stake here, the microbrewery owners and operators themselves? Is this something that they've sort of rallied against, or come together to rally against, or is this something? Because it sounds to me, absent of making them pay for the full liquor license. I'm looking here at some quotes from the Tonewood brewery that you one of the owners that you interviewed there. It seems like there's been a relatively measured reaction from the people who actually own and operate a microbrewery and do this every day. What's been your take on that so far? How have people responded?
So it's kind of complicated. One of the things that people are finding in New Jersey is that the microbrewery is a really great downtown economic redevelopment tool. If you put a small brewery in your town, it's an attraction. Brewery tourism has its own culture. People want to taste and experience local beer. It has much more of a movement in New Jersey than it probably did even as recently as 10 years ago. And so a lot of communities, particularly in Camden County, I can name several within, miles of one another, have opened up these little breweries in their towns because they want to have the opportunity of bringing more foot traffic to their downtowns. So it's been this partnership of putting a brewery in your town, and it supports the other economic interests of your community. And that's been good for a number of the breweries. The ones who are most affected by these rules are what's called the nano breweries, and they're the ones who produce the smallest amount of beer and maybe don't have the physical infrastructure to support mass production and distribution of their product. And so these regulations were negotiated actually with two of the beer guilds, the professional groups, and the restaurant associations sitting at the table. So there were a number of things that were probably going to be stricter regulations that came off the table in exchange for some of the stuff that went in there. Now, the smallest breweries, the nano breweries, are nervous because without the opportunity to really distribute at volume, they're reliant on foot traffic and the profits from their tasting room to keep them alive. And even most of the microbreweries enjoy a significant portion of the revenue from that tasting room. Breweries that are distribution focused or have the ability to produce at scale, to put in a canning line, to put in kegging operations, to sell to bars and restaurants at volume, they are not too troubled by these rules because they say it allows us to focus more on being a brewery and not being an event space that serves beer. Yeah. But there's been mixed reactions all between. Another of the brewers I talked to, Drew Perry from a brewery called Double Nickel in Pennsauken, said that, this really affected the way that they considered their operations because they entered into the business with a certain set of understanding of the rules. Now, a few years in, things are changing. One of the biggest things that they do over there is fundraisers, and they get requests just about every single day to use some of their private spaces for fundraisers for animal shelters or various charitable causes, and now they can't do that as often. They have to pick and choose. Those events definitely brought in revenues for the brewery, but they also brought in, revenues for nonprofits, and now it's going to make a lot of those partnerships more difficult to form. Yeah. And so the leadership at the brewers' organizations are saying, this is at least a starting point for us to see how far we can push back. And a number of the breweries that you probably have seen began circulating petitions to immediately recall these rules and remove the handcuffs, as they call them, from the brewing industry.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about where we can folks can read more of your work? I know you have njpen.com. Do you have newsletters? Tell us a little bit more about that. And
Sure. njpen.com is a suburban Camden County news outlet. We focus on the inner ring communities around Camden City in the suburban part of the county, right immediately outside that urban area. And it's njpen.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've got a daily email. We've got a text messaging service if you want to catch our news updates that way. And we focus on this particular part of the state. And we've been following the microbrew business for a number of years now. It's been a real big piece of economic redevelopment. It's been a piece of statewide legislation. And it's certainly one of probably the most interesting industries to watch in South Jersey, if not the whole state. There are 23 other license applicants still in the pipeline for brewery operations too. So even though there's fewer than 90 total licenses being discussed right now, that actually is small in a nationwide perspective. New Jersey is not, one of the brewery heavy states. Mm-hmm. You can see that this is going to be an issue that probably will come to your hometown or one nearby pretty soon.
All right, well, we will keep checking back to njpen.com for more updates. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. When we come back, we will be joined by Mary Galliato, another local publisher in New Jersey, publishing mercerme.com. We'll talk a little bit about her, about newspaper subscription models and what that means for a local community.
Every child deserves a quality education. That's why NJEA members, teachers, and educational support professionals are proud to partner with parents to provide students with the support they need to be successful in school and in life. NJEA knows that when families and schools work together, our children are the winners. And our commitment to students is paying off. Did you know that according to some national publications, New Jersey schools lead the country in student achievement and giving children the chance to succeed? And our high school graduation rate is among the top in the nation. The College Board also reports that New Jersey students have the highest advanced placement scores in the nation. Go to njea.org to learn more about the great things happening in New Jersey's public schools.
This message sponsored by the New Jersey Education Association, the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, and this station.
What's up, people? I'm Patrick Ketty, and you need to tune into my show on Thursdays, 7 to 10 p.m. on 90.3 WMSC, Stop and Stroll Radio, where I bring you the best ska, punk, and rock and roll. Ska is not dead, and I'm here to prove it to you. Tune in every Thursday, 7 to 10 p.m. anywhere in the world on WMSCRadio.com or the iHeartRadio app, or if you're here with us in Montclair, 90.3 on the FM radio dial. I'll see you there.
Ska is not dead. I love you, Patrick. If you're listening, you got to listen to Pat's show. He's a great guy. He's hilarious. And Ska is indeed not dead. Welcome back to the News Commons Radio Hour. Our tentative title here for this weekly radio show on WMSC 90.3 Upper Montclair. We're joined here today by phone by Mary Galliotto, who's the editor and publisher of MercerMe.com. That's a local community publication that serves Mercer County down there in South Jersey there. Would you consider that South Jersey, Mary?
No, it's actually Central Jersey.
If it's below 78, it's South Jersey, in my opinion. So I guess we'll have to disagree on there. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit today about newsroom subscriptions or news service subscriptions, subscription models, the business model of journalism. First, can you tell me a little bit about Mercer Me, how you started, and what your relationship is with this publication? How do you run this thing?
Yeah, I started it nearly 5 years ago. And Joe, you and I have known each other for really nearly since I started it. And it started off as a real small blog that ended up morphing into real news coverage. It is poised to cover Mercer County, but I'm scaling slowly, and it really is a heavy focus on Hopewell Valley, which is 3 towns. So I'm the founder, I'm the publisher, the editor, the ad sale person, the everything. And then I also have 2 reporters who go out to the meetings, and they're incredible. They're actually both interns from the College of New Jersey. So I have them on my team. And it's online only, as you know, and it's been supported by advertising, by local advertising up until this point.
So you're wearing many hats, as a lot of local and hyperlocal publishers are in this day and age. The advertising support for the journalism industry and journalism businesses at all sizes and levels has been, to say the least, declining since the advent and ubiquity of the internet. Talk a little bit about, you started 5 years ago. Talk a little bit about what it was like when you first started, and your sort of approach to this. Did you have any experience with ad sales or business development or even audience development anyway? You were a reporter, right?
No, I had no experience with any of it.
Oh, wow.
I was a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
And so, I have experience analyzing. Going to a planning board meeting is not foreign language to me.
Right.
But, yeah, I was new to all of it, to journalism and also running my own business and sales.
Yeah. What over the last 5 years, do you do this full time? Is this is your full-time gig?
I do this, and I'm also the PR and media coordinator for our local arts council.
Okay, so it sounds like you're pretty involved in the community. What has been the response from people outside of the subscription model, just in general, to your reporting, to your how's your relationship with members of the community, and what has that been like trying to not only venture into the world of journalism, but local, hyperlocal, and online journalism, and how have they responded to that so far in your experience?
I think the overall experience has been phenomenal. Even when I just started going out to meetings, I very quickly started developing a following. All of my following really is organic, and I have a great readership, tremendous support in the community, great relationships with elected officials and local nonprofits and business owners. So I would say overall it's really a valued service in the community, and I get great feedback regarding that as well.
So why subscription? What was the moment? And how has it been going so far? You launched the subscription campaign officially on the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, that's right.
How has it gone so far, and what have you learned in these last few days? I mean, it's very early, obviously, but
yeah. Well, I guess it's going slower than I expected. I've been really so. To be quite honest, I even had, Joe, you know that I've been interviewed for this, but I really was a stay-at-home mom and did this, was a reporter and a publisher and did all of this while I was watching my young kids. So it really wasn't important to me to be making a living, and I haven't paid myself. But it's gotten to the point where my life has changed a lot, and I really can't continue. I'm 5 years in. Can't continue. This is a not sustainable model. And I'm not a salesperson. I don't enjoy the hustle. So the subscription's going okay, but I think it's going much slower than I had anticipated. I think that I thought I would feel much more relieved at this point, that there would be much more initial interest. But no one's ever interested in parting with money, I guess. So
well,
we'll have to see.
This is something that the Center for Cooperative Media has been exploring and talking and thinking about for some time. I think almost everyone in the media industry is thinking in some capacity about this. If before we let you go, if there are any questions that you're dying to get an answer to that you just can't seem to figure out, anything like that pop in your, what is something that you're agonizing over right now? Something that you just can't seem to work out as far as subscriptions are going?
I think the thing that I'm most really interested in knowing is, how patient does one need to be? Am I looking at a patient span of 6 months, a year, 2 years? I've never owned a business before, so for me to play this guessing game to figure out at what point do I determine whether or not this is sustainable?
Yeah, do we have to wait another 5 years to figure out that that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Tell us a little bit about where people can find your work and how they can subscribe if they're in the Hopewell Valley area or Mercer County.
Yep. The website is mercerme.com. If you want to subscribe, there's a big green subscribe button on the right-hand side. It's $5 for the month, $50 for the year. And that's about it. I really hope everyone subscribes. It's such a great value to the community, and I'm really proud of the work that we do.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate it. Mary Galliotto is the publisher and editor of MercerMe.com, and when we come back, we'll be joined in the studio by Director of the Center for Cooperative Media, Stephanie Murray, and we're going to have a little chat before we wrap up. All right, we'll be back.
Every day, across this country, hundreds of college radio stations take to the air, broadcasting music and programming that you won't hear anywhere else.
It's one of the last places where people can really be able to actually say what they want to say.
Without it, you wouldn't have a place for local artists to perform. Certain people need to have a chance, a fighting chance, and college radio is that place for it.
College radio changes the lives of those who are involved with it, and can change those who listen to it too.
This is where we start out, From getting all this great experience working in college radio, it makes you want to work in real radio.
College radio means finding yourself. It helped me find what I wanted to do in not only school but in life.
So support college radio by continuing to listen to this station and supporting the students who make it happen. College radio, now, more than ever. A message brought to you by this station and the College Radio Foundation. For more information, please visit collegeradio.org.
When I heard about Parkland, I remember sitting there crying, and how could this happen again? Why is no one doing anything about it? And I was just yelling about it to my roommate. She's like, Ashley, you can't do anything. And I'm like, you're right, I can't. But you know what? At least I can spread awareness. So that's why I started this podcast. The fact that I'm in college radio, I'm like, hey, I am a part of this platform of media, and I'm like, I have a place where I can give my opinion and try to make a difference, spread awareness, and be like, hey, you know what? This is happening, guys. That's why I do it, and that's why college radio is so special to me, because I have a platform to do and say things and be able to make a change, not only in my life, but in other lives as well.
When all else fails, college radio speaks. October 5th. 2018.
All right, welcome back to the News Commons Radio Hour. I'm Joe Amditis, and I'm joined here in the studio with Stephanie Murray, who is the director of the Center for Cooperative Media and my boss. A new study out this week from researcher Jesse Holcomb and the Tao Center for Digital Journalism at Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. Little disclosure, we work with Jesse Holcomb on an unrelated research project. The study just came out, shows that most newspapers, broadcasters, and digital native publishers have websites. Shocking. They sell ads and they use Facebook, but it's actually not all of them. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the local news and digital landscape with Stephanie Murray, who is here today. She spent 15 years as a reporter and editor, including spending several years helping local newspapers make the transition to digital, and she's currently our director. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
So first, the new report by Jesse Holcomb. Again, the center is currently working with him on an unrelated research project, but this new report has a couple of surprises in it. So why don't we start with the basics? Everybody has a website, right?
You would think, but that's not actually the case. So this is a topic I've spent years of my career actually working with, because I work for local newspapers and we struggled to make a transition to digital for years. And so Jesse's report was pretty interesting. So what he did is they looked at a sample of about 1,800 local news organizations that involved radio, TV, newspapers from all around the country. Mm-hmm. And analyzed all sorts of things about how they operate digitally today. So one of the surprising things to me was the website issue. More than 1 in 10, so 12% of the total, do not have a website. And if you factor in those that just have a PDF, and that's what they post a PDF
as their website.
That's their digital footprint. 17% of the news orgs that he studied, they have no website, no PDF.
It's almost 1 in 5. Almost 1 in 5.
It's pretty high. So 17% of them don't have that sort of digital footprint that we would expect if you factored in those that use PDFs as their digital presence.
Does he say anything about why that's the case, or is it a lack of financial resources or technical capability?
So Jesse's report really analyzed from a numbers perspective, who has this and who doesn't, who doesn't. He didn't really get into the why. One of the things that was interesting is of that 17%, a high percentage of those are community weekly newspapers. So that's really where a big segment where we see if news orgs that are lagging digitally, it's normally going to be in that area, in those community weeklies. We found that the report found that there are some news orgs that don't have a presence on Facebook, but many do. Even the ones that don't have a website, they were a third of them still had a Facebook presence.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's could be because it's easier to start up a Facebook page and easier to maintain, and it's more
built-in network and everything.
Yeah, it's part of people's lives. They use Facebook. They might not use WordPress every day, so it might have been easier for them to do that. And there are some of them that just do social media, and that's pretty much it.
What about mobile news? Everybody has a phone. More and more people are getting their news specifically via their phone, and whether or not that means anything necessarily different than a laptop or desktop, there are some differences. Can you talk a little bit about what the report has to say in terms of mobile news consumption and production?
So Jesse looked at which of these local news organizations had apps and which of them had responsive design. So we probably could have guessed this, but relatively few actually offer their own mobile app. About 27% had an app in the Apple Store is what they looked at. Apps are far more common for broadcast outlets and in daily newspapers, much less common for smaller digital operations or those community publications we talked about earlier. As far as responsive design, though, most of them, a good chunk of them did have responsive websites. So that seems to be how they're responding to news on mobile today, is making their websites responsive on smaller devices. So he looked at a sample of about 200 subset of the 1,800, and 84% of them had a mobile responsive site. I should mention that he did study how many of them use Google AMP, because some of them
accelerated mobile pages,
accelerated
quick
mobile
loads,
pages.
and
exactly, which helps.
Like instant articles on Facebook, right?
It is, it helps those pages load a lot quicker.
Well, we talked about this in the last segment with Mary Galliotto, the issue of revenue. This is something, obviously, if you can't put bread on the table, you can't put words on the PDF.
But nice. You're the king of metaphors, Joe.
Thank you. But what does it say about revenue? Is there anything about revenue generation from these digital? Is it more or less profitable? What's up?
Yeah. So Jesse, obviously, as we saw with Mary, many local news publishers are still struggling to build sustainable digital business models, I should say. So he looked at subscriptions or membership, paywalls, and advertising. So his analysis found that a slight majority of the local news outlets, about 57%, did offer something online to subscribe, donate, or become a member. So when it comes to print, most of those daily publications, the daily newspapers, many of them had this in place already. And you would probably guess that because they've already had subscriptions for years. So transitioning that digitally should have been not as hard. So 94% of the daily newspapers they studied, you could subscribe online. But just more than 2/3 of the community weeklies offered such an option. So again, it's community weeklies that we see that are lagging behind a little bit.
So for those of you, all of our 3 listeners out there who may be diehard research nerds like myself, who I'm sure are dying to read this paper, where can we find it? How can they learn more about Jessie Holcomb's work?
Yes. So the paper goes into much more depth on what it found on these 1,800 news organizations. And if you go to cjr.org, which stands for Columbia Journalism Review, you can take a look at the paper.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Before we finally wrap up, you can go to centerforcooperativemedia.org to learn more about the center and what we do. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily and weekly and monthly newsletters. I think we have 8,000 newsletters at this point.
Not quite.
Not that. Yeah, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. You go to centerforcooperativemedia.org. I am Joe M. Ditas, and we are joined here. Thank you so much, Stephanie Murray, our director. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll come back and finish, and we'll do our question of the week.
This was initiated originally because someone from Vieques decided to come to the college radio station and get interviewed about post-Hurricane Maria destruction and then recovery efforts. So because of that, because of college radio, we were able to think about ways that we can help the island, about helping Vieques specifically. And because of college radio, there's so many talents that people have. People have programming talents, they have production talents, they have social media talents, they have journalism talents. So because of college radio and the skills that people have, there's a reason why so many of the people involved in this Vieques Recovery Project are also a radio station or college radio station members.
When all else fails, College Radio Speaks. October 5th, 2018.
All right, welcome back. And you made it to the end of our inaugural episode, I guess we'll call it. I'm so used to the podcast world, it's an episode. But the inaugural show at the News Commons Radio Hour. I am Joe M. Ditas, and before we go, we're going to try this, and I'm expecting a torrent of responses from all of you out there. But we're going to ask a question every week, and then I'm going to solicit responses throughout the week. And at the end of every show, we'll go into the detail, and we'll read some of the responses on the air, assuming that there are limited profanity. I think we'll stick to limited. So this week's question is really simple. How do you get your local news, and why is it so important to you? Is it important to you? So just a general open-ended question to talk about your relationship with your local news provider. Do you have one? Is it something you trust? Why do you trust it? Why do you go to them consistently? Or why do you not? Why do you shy away from it? I think that's it for me here at WMSC 90.3 Upper Montclair. I am Joe M. Ditas. I am Associate Director of the Center for Cooperative Media, and you have been listening to the News Commons Radio Hour. Join us next week, Thursday, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Good night.